Hello again, everyone. Edwin Lerner back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about astrology and aging. And anyway, and yes, what I'm talking about, the zodiac signs in this, of course, it does apply and pertain to the sun, moon, and ascendant. Well, anyway, I think what's interesting is the first thing I'm going to go over a little bit what I talked about in the zodiac signs in aging, and reiterate that a little, and then go on to my a little more about the chart itself in general in aging. So, first thing I want to get on is that Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer, I do believe strongly, based on my own observations and studies, it seems like they age more gracefully on average as opposed to the other nine zodiac signs. Taurus seems like they're very delayed in graying. Gemini has such a vivacious and whimsical outlook and attitude even in their older age, and I'm thinking that might play a little bit role in that they seem to retain youthful looks even in their older age. And Cancer, I'm not really sure to be honest with you, what the reason is behind Cancer, but Cancer seems like they're very slow in terms of aging as well, so I think those three are the ones that age the most gracefully out of the 12 zodiac signs. Capricorn can be paradoxical. They may look older when they're younger, but conversely, when they're older, they have this propensity to look younger, I believe. And I think what's interesting is I would really think that Leo, of all the 12 zodiac signs, may more often, more frequently try to camouflage and conceal their aging because pride is such a strong part of their nature. And I think they would be doing this really strongly to not show that they are aging. Now, Scorpio, I think they don't necessarily age as gracefully as at least most of the other signs, if not all the other signs on average. But the thing about Scorpio, I think they're very spry in their older age. I mean, you look at Clint Eastwood, who has Scorpio rising. I don't know his age, but I think he's in his 80s. I think he was born in 1935, so that would put him in his 80s right now. So the thing about it is, I mean, he's very. He might have even been born in 1930. I think it might be 1930. So I think he's well in his 80s, and he seems very spry and really alert mentally. And that's something about Scorpios. Seem like they're able to really stay quick-witted even at an older age, I've noticed. Now, I think also Libra can age very gracefully as well because they have that beauty, perhaps connected with them being ruled by Venus, even at an older age, may have a very youthful countenance or visage or complexion or what have you. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about now I'm going to talk about more about the chart itself in general, as far as what certain things you could look for as far as aging. Now, it seems like a lot of research I've done is that Capricorn on the 8th seems like it could indicate increased longevity. But I think that's paradoxical because Capricorn on the cusp of a house, I think, can indicate sometimes where the difficulties may arise in that area of life. So that's something to look for. Now, I think Saturn conjunct the ascendant could be like Capricorn, like a Capricorn influence, like similar to Capricorn rising, for example, because Saturn does rule Capricorn. Saturn conjunct the ascendant, which is what I have, could indicate maybe somebody looking older when they're young, and then conversely, looking younger as they get older. Now, also I think Mercury conjunct ascendant can give a youthful appearance in their latter years. I think a well-aspected Jupiter in the 8th or Sagittarius on the 8th house cusp can be fortuitous for aging, but I think that depends on the aspects to Jupiter, which is the ruler of Sagittarius, of course. A well-aspected Venus in the 8th could indicate peace and tranquility near that time of death, or right near that point of death. So, and when you have peace and tranquility around that time, I think that could also help perhaps increase the propensity to live a little bit longer. Now, on average. Now, Oh, also a well-aspected Venus or Jupiter in the fourth house, I believe, can be advantageous as far as aging goes because the fourth house does rule the end of life. I have Venus in the fourth house, so hopefully the end of the latter part of my life will be very tranquil and have a lot of peace in it. I do hope so, according to that place. But however, it does have a lot of adverse aspects, so that's another thing. Also, I think a well-aspected Pluto in the chart, because Pluto is associated with death. A well-aspected Pluto in the natal chart can also be beneficial and helpful as far as the aging goes, and living maybe a little bit longer than otherwise indicated or above average, and at least increase the chances of that. And also, if somebody has a well-aspected eighth house ruler, that could be auspicious as well, or a well-aspected fourth house ruler. Now, when I want to talk about it's interesting. There's somebody I looked on the internet. I believe she was the oldest recorded living person ever. Jean Kalman lived to be 122 years old. Interestingly, she had the sun in Pisces, but she was born near the Aquarius cusp. As many of you may know, Aquarius is governed or ruled by Uranus and Saturn is the planet connected with longevity. Now, she also had Libra on the 8th house cusp, and that ruler was Venus in the sign, you guessed it, Capricorn, which Capricorn seems to be the sign that lives the longest on average. I understand this is Venus, it's not the sun, moon, or sun, but I just think it's interesting that that ruler happens to be in Capricorn. Now, she also had Jupiter in the 8th house, which could be fortuitous for older age. And also, that's the ruler of her 10th house of notoriety and recognition. So I thought it's interesting. She kind of became famous for the fact that she lived so long prior to death. So now she also had Mercury in the first house, and I think that could help a little bit too. I mentioned things about conjunctions before, but I think if you have those planets like Mercury, if it's conjunct the ascendant, or if it's even if it's in the first house, it could help as well. But I think it's stronger if it's actually conjunct the ascendant. I mean, you could have it conjunct and in the first house as well, of course. So anyway, now I thought it was interesting that the Saturn, the planet that is associated with longevity, was in its dignity in Aquarius in her chart. So that's something interesting. And when she died, sadly, she had Chiron transiting her 8th house. Like Chiron could be associated with wounds. It could sometimes, I think, physical, but a lot of it's more just general suffering in general. Sometimes it's emotional. But the fact that Chiron was transiting her 8th house, I thought was interesting when she died. She also had Mars transiting the 8th house as well, so I thought that was an interesting point as far as the transits go when she had passed away. But the reason I'm talking about that is because it's just an example of looking at a chart and seeing maybe some indicators as to possibly where you might have a greater maybe proclivity or propensity toward living a little bit longer than average. But of course, you always have to factor in what's hereditary in your genes as well. So I think that's another thing. You always have to factor that into the equation. Well, anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment on astrology and aging. And stay tuned next time, where I'll be continuing my zodiac sign compatibility series. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person astrologically speaking based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.